Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special deep dive edition of English in Moments. I'm Elena, and I am so glad you've decided to join me today for what I promise will be a transformative journey. We are about to embark on a complete masterclass, a comprehensive exploration of one of the most vital and dynamic skills in any language, chatting about trending topics. Now, you might be thinking, why dedicate a whole masterclass to this? The answer is simple. Language is, at its heart, about connection. It's about sharing ideas, understanding the world around us, and participating in the culture we live in. Trending topics, the news, the viral videos, the new technologies, the cultural moments that everyone seems to be talking about are the pulse of that culture. They are the modern day campfire stories around which we gather. Being able to discuss them confidently and intelligently in English doesn't just improve your vocabulary, it unlocks a new level of fluency. It moves you from being a passive observer of English culture to an active, engaged participant. It allows you to walk into a room, a coffee shop, or a video call and connect with people on what's happening right now. Over the course of this masterclass, we are going to build your skills from the ground up, piece by piece, until you feel like a natural. Our journey together will have several key stages. First, we'll explore the very beginning of the process: how to spot a trend, and, more importantly, how to start a conversation about it. We'll learn the phrases that act as keys, unlocking the door to discussion. Next, we will spend a significant amount of time building a powerful vocabulary toolkit. You can't discuss a topic if you don't have the words, so we will stock our minds with the language of internet culture, the news, and nuanced opinion. After that, we will dive into the very heart of our subject: the art of voicing your opinion. This will be an incredibly detailed exploration, moving far beyond a simple "I think." We will learn how to express ourselves with strength, with subtlety, with diplomacy, and with clarity. From there, we'll master the dance of a real conversation: how to listen, how to agree with enthusiasm, how to disagree with grace, and how to find that beautiful middle ground. Following that, we'll add a crucial layer to our understanding by exploring what I call the cultural compass. We will investigate how cultural differences can change the rules of a conversation, looking at everything from direct versus indirect communication styles to the meaning of silence itself. This will equip you to navigate conversations not just with speakers from one country, but with English speakers from all over our diverse world. Finally, we'll learn how to bring a conversation to a polite and satisfying close. Think of this not as a lecture, but as a workshop. There will be stories, detailed scenarios we'll walk through together, and moments for you to pause, reflect, and even speak out loud. My goal is for you to leave this session not just with a list of phrases, but with a deep, intuitive understanding of how these conversations work. You will learn the strategy, the psychology, and the heart behind casual, everyday chats about what's new and what's next. So, find a comfortable spot, perhaps grab a notebook, and let's begin our journey into the vibrant, fast moving world of trending topics. Every great conversation begins with a single spark. When it comes to trending topics, that spark is often a simple question or observation. But how do you create it? How do you move from silence to discussion without it feeling awkward or forced? This module is all about mastering that initial moment. We'll break it down into two parts. First, how to ask about a trend you've noticed but don't understand. And second, how to confidently bring up a topic you already know something about. Let's start with the first scenario, which is incredibly common. You're scrolling online or talking to friends, and you realize you're out of the loop. Everyone is using a word you don't recognize or referencing a video you haven't seen. This is a perfect low pressure opportunity to start a chat. Instead of staying quiet, you can show curiosity. A fantastic casual phrase is, "What's all the buzz about?" The word buzz here is wonderful. It perfectly captures the feeling of excited, widespread conversation. You could say to a colleague, "I'm a bit behind on things this week. What's all the buzz about this new Project Nightingale I keep hearing about in meetings?" It's friendly, humble, and invites a detailed explanation. Another great alternative is, "Fill me in on." This is a casual command that means, "Give me the information I'm missing." It's very friendly. "Okay, I give up. Fill me in on this new streaming service everyone's switching to." Another brilliant phrase for this situation is, "I keep seeing posts about X, what's the story there?" This is specific to things you might see on social media, in the news, or on blogs. It shows you're observant but need someone to connect the dots for you. Imagine you're at lunch with a friend and you say, "I keep seeing posts about a new restaurant called The Gilded Spoon getting terrible reviews. What's the story there? I thought it was supposed to be amazing." This question doesn't just ask what the topic is, it asks for the narrative, the inside scoop. A slightly more direct way to express this is by admitting you're behind, which is perfectly fine and very relatable. You could use the idiom, "Am I out of the loop?" or "Is everyone talking about?" The expression, "out of the loop," means you're not part of the group that has the latest information. It's a charmingly honest way to ask. For example, "Am I out of the loop, or is everyone suddenly an expert on 18th century sea shanties? I saw 3 videos about it this morning." This often gets a laugh and makes the other person happy to fill you in. Now, let's flip the scenario. Let's say you are in the loop. You've read the article, you've seen the movie, you understand the news. Now your role is to be the conversation starter. We have our classic, reliable phrases that we touched upon briefly in our introduction, but let's dissect them with more care. The first is, "Have you heard about?" This is your all-purpose go-to phrase. It's a gentle, non-demanding question. Its power lies in its openness. When you ask, "Have you heard about that new plan to build a park by the river?" you aren't assuming the other person has seen or read anything specific. They could have heard about it from a friend, on the radio, or not at all, and any answer is fine. It's a soft opening. Contrast this with, "Did you see?" This phrase is more specific. It implies a visual component. You would use it when the trending topic is something that was watched, a film, a news report on TV, a viral video, a specific set of pictures. "Did you see the final episode of Galaxy Runners?" is a perfect use of this phrase. "Did you see the debate last night?" is another. Using "did you see" when the topic is more abstract, like a new idea or a government policy, can sometimes be confusing. If you say, "Did you see the new inflation policy?" the person might wonder, "See it where? Was there a document I was supposed to look at?" In that case, "Have you heard about the new inflation policy?" would be a much better fit. It's a subtle difference, but these subtleties are what make your English sound truly natural. To expand your toolkit further, let's introduce some more sophisticated conversation starters. If you want to sound a bit more thoughtful or lead into your opinion, you could start with, "I just read an interesting article about." This is a fantastic opener because it immediately establishes that you have some information to share. It positions you as an informed participant. For example, I just read an interesting article about how 4-day work weeks are boosting productivity in some companies. Have you come across any of that? The phrase come across is a great, natural sounding synonym for seen or heard about. Another excellent friendly opener is my friend was just telling me about. This phrase is great because it's informal and creates a sense of shared community. It feels like you're passing along a secret or a fun piece of gossip. My friend was just telling me about this incredible new bakery downtown. Apparently, you have to wait in line for an hour. Have you heard anything about that? A more forward looking phrase could be, what are your thoughts on the upcoming on a break? This is perfect for scheduled events like a new product launch, a movie release, or an election. What are your thoughts on the upcoming smartphone release? Are you planning to upgrade? Let's deepen this with a more complex, evolving scenario. Imagine Elena is at a casual work gathering. She wants to talk to her colleague, Ben, about a new trend in their industry, the use of AI for creative work like writing and design. Attempt 1, the curious approach. Elena could start by feigning ignorance to open the door for Ben. Ben, maybe you can fill me in. I keep hearing the term generative AI in our meetings, and I see it all over my newsfeed. What's the real story there? Is it as revolutionary as they say? This approach puts Ben in the expert seat, which can be a great way to start a conversation. Attempt 2, the informed approach. Alternatively, Elena could show she's already engaged with the topic. Ben, I just read a wild article in a tech journal about an AI that can create photorealistic images from a simple text description. Did you happen to see that? It seems like it could completely change the design industry. This approach shows she's done her homework and invites Ben to join her at that level. Attempt 3, the personal connection. She could also connect it to their direct experience. Ben, I was thinking about that AI discussion from yesterday's meeting. It got me wondering, have you heard any buzz from the design team about how they plan to use it? I'm fascinated by the implications for our workflow. This makes the topic immediately relevant and collaborative. Each of these openers is a valid strategy. The one you choose depends on your goal. Do you want to learn from the other person? Do you want to share what you know, or do you want to collaborate on an idea? Being conscious of these choices is the first step toward becoming a truly masterful conversationalist. The key takeaway from this module is that starting a conversation is a skill you can practice. It's about choosing the right tool, the right phrase, for the right job. It's about being brave enough to admit when you don't know something and confident enough to share what you do. Now that you have the keys, let's move on to building the house. We need the vocabulary to actually construct the conversation itself. If starting the conversation is the spark, then vocabulary is the fuel that keeps the fire going. You simply cannot have a deep, engaging discussion about trending topics without the right words. In this module, we will construct a powerful vocabulary toolkit. We're not just going to learn words, we're going to understand their flavor, their context, and their power. We'll divide this into 3 essential areas: the language of internet culture, the language of news and events, and the crucial adjectives you need to express a truly nuanced opinion. Let's begin with the internet, the engine of so many modern trends. The first word you absolutely must know is viral. When something goes viral, it means it spreads incredibly quickly across the internet, like a virus. A video, a picture, or an idea can go viral. For example, did you see that video of the dog who can skateboard? It went viral overnight. It has over 50 million views now. The noun form is virality. A marketing team might discuss, we can't predict the virality of a campaign, but we can try to create shareable content. Closely related to viral content is the meme. A meme is a piece of culture, typically a humorous image, video, or piece of text that is copied and spread rapidly by internet users, often with slight variations. Understanding memes is like understanding cultural inside jokes. You might hear someone say, the distracted boyfriend meme is old, but it's still one of my favorites. Or, the meeting was so boring, everyone was secretly sending memes to each other. A person who is very knowledgeable about internet culture might be described as being extremely online, a phrase that can be both a compliment and a criticism. When a new product, movie, or idea is getting a lot of viral attention and buzz, we call it hype. Hype is intense, excited promotion or publicity. It's that feeling of massive anticipation. For instance, there is so much hype around the new smartphone. I hope it lives up to the expectations. Hype can be positive, but it can also be a bubble that bursts. We often talk about a hype train, which is a metaphor for the collective excitement building around something. You might say, I'm trying not to get on the hype train for that new video game until I see some real reviews. But what happens when the public mood turns against the hype? That's when you get a backlash. A backlash is a strong, negative reaction from a large number of people. The company faced a huge backlash after they changed their logo. People hated it. Hype and backlash are two sides of the same coin of public opinion. When a person or company is facing a backlash, we often say they are in the middle of a PR nightmare, where PR stands for public relations. Two more essential internet terms are hot take and clickbait. A hot take is a deliberately provocative or controversial opinion that is shared for the purpose of generating attention and discussion. It's often a quick and sometimes not very well thought out reaction. For example, after a new movie comes out, someone might post a hot take like, hot take, the hero was actually the villain of the whole story. It's designed to make you stop and argue. Clickbait, on the other hand, refers to headlines and online content that are designed to attract attention and entice users to click on a link. The content itself is often disappointing or doesn't deliver on the headline's promise. You might see a headline like, "You won't believe what this celebrity said." That's classic clickbait. Recognizing these terms helps you understand the landscape of online information and discuss it critically. Now, let's shift from the often frivolous world of the internet to the more serious language of news and current events. When a major positive new discovery is made, especially in science or technology, we call it a breakthrough. Scientists have announced a major breakthrough in battery technology that could double the life of our phones. When an event has significant, often negative consequences, we talk about the fallout. This term comes from the idea of nuclear fallout, so it implies something widespread and damaging. In the fallout from the political scandal, several key advisors had to resign. Another useful word is ramifications, which is a more neutral synonym for fallout, referring to the complex consequences of an action. The ramifications of the new trade agreement will be felt for years. A topic that causes a lot of public disagreement is a controversy. The new art installation in the city square has sparked a huge controversy. Some people love it, while others say it's a waste of money. The adjective form is controversial. It was a controversial decision to close the local library. When we talk about the future effects or results of an action or decision, We use the word implications. This is a wonderfully intelligent word to use in a discussion. The implications of this new AI technology are enormous. It could change everything about how we work. Let's talk about the people who talk about the news. A pundit is an expert in a particular subject who is frequently called upon to give opinions about it to the public, often on TV or in newspapers. The political pundits are all predicting a close election, but you never really know. Using a word like pundit shows a sophisticated understanding of the media world. Finally, we arrive at the most important part of our vocabulary toolkit: the adjectives of opinion. Moving beyond good, bad, interesting, and boring is the single fastest way to make your opinions sound more intelligent and specific. Let's create a spectrum of words. If you think something is getting more praise than it deserves, the perfect word is overrated. To be honest, I think that restaurant is completely overrated. The food was fine, but not worth the price. The opposite of this is underrated, meaning something is better than people realize. That actor is so underrated. He's brilliant in every movie, but he never wins any awards. If something is new, original, and changes the game, you can call it groundbreaking. Her research on cellular regeneration was truly groundbreaking. A slightly less intense but still very positive word is innovative. If an idea or a piece of art makes you think deeply, it is thought-provoking. It was a very thought-provoking film. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Now for a very important and modern word, problematic. This adjective is used to describe something that is not overtly bad, but has elements that are questionable, offensive, or could cause problems. It signals a complex, critical view. For example, I enjoyed the book, but the way it portrays its female characters is a bit problematic. This is a much more nuanced take than simply saying it was bad. If something is designed to appeal to the widest possible audience and lacks originality, you might call it mainstream or even formulaic. I was disappointed with the movie. The plot felt very formulaic, like I'd seen it 100 times before. And what if you have mixed feelings? Instead of saying it was good and bad, you could describe it as a mixed bag. This idiom means something has both positive and negative qualities. Her new album is a mixed bag. A few songs are incredible, but the rest are quite forgettable. Let me tell you a quick story to illustrate how important these words are. When I was first learning French, I went to see a French film with a friend. Afterwards, he asked me what I thought. I only knew the basic words, so I said, "It was interesting." He looked at me, confused. "Interesting? But what did you feel?" He explained that interesting can sometimes be a polite way to say you didn't like something. I was trying to say it was thought-provoking and complex, but I didn't have the words. I learned then that specific vocabulary isn't just for showing off. It's for being understood accurately. It's for connecting your true thoughts to another person's mind. So I encourage you to take these words: viral, hype, backlash, breakthrough, implications, overrated, problematic, a mixed bag, and make them your own. They are the building blocks we will now use to construct the beautiful and complex structure of our opinions. Welcome to the heart of our masterclass. In this module, we will dive deeper than ever before into the art and science of expressing your opinion. This is where you transform from a listener into a speaker, from a consumer of ideas into a producer of them. We're going to build a sophisticated framework for sharing your thoughts, covering everything from expressing absolute certainty to offering a delicate diplomatic critique. Prepare to upgrade your language toolkit in a significant way. We'll begin by exploring what I call the spectrum of certainty. In any discussion, the level of conviction you project is incredibly important. Are you 100% sure or just offering a tentative idea? Your language should reflect that. Let's start at the strong end of the spectrum: strong certainty. These are the phrases you use when you have a powerful conviction and you want everyone to know it. A classic "I think" is too weak here. Instead, you could say, "I'm convinced that," or "I'm certain that." For example, "I'm convinced that investing in renewable energy is the only viable path forward." This phrase signals deep belief based on evidence or strong feeling. An even more powerful option is, "There's no doubt in my mind that." This removes any possibility of ambiguity. "There's no doubt in my mind that she was the most qualified candidate for the job." Or if you want to be particularly emphatic, especially when you're taking a stand, you can say, "I stand firm on this." Or "I will say this unequivocally and e." These are heavyweight phrases, best used for topics you are passionate about. "I stand firm on this." Art and music education should be mandatory in all schools. Using these phrases tells your conversation partner that your position is not easily changed. Now let's move to the middle of the spectrum, which is where most of our daily opinions live. This is the zone of moderate certainty. These are your workhorse phrases. We all know "I think" and "I believe." But let's add more texture. A slightly more formal and thoughtful alternative is, "It seems to me that." This phrase is wonderful because it's slightly softer than "I think." It implies you are interpreting the evidence and presenting your conclusion. "It seems to me that the new policy hasn't really solved the underlying problem." Another great phrase is, "From my perspective," or "As I see it." These expressions are useful because they explicitly frame the opinion as your own, acknowledging that others might see it differently. "From my perspective, the benefits of the project outweigh the costs." This is less confrontational than stating your opinion as an absolute fact. A very useful phrase in this category is, "I would argue that." Zrania, which is common in more formal or academic discussions. While some people focus on the risks, I would argue that the potential rewards are too great to ignore. Next, we journey to the softer, more delicate end of the spectrum: tentative opinions. Sharing a tentative thought is a vital skill. It allows you to contribute to a conversation without having to be an expert. It invites discussion rather than declaring a final position. A beautiful phrase for this is, "I get the impression that." It suggests you're forming an opinion based on feelings and subtle clues. "I get the impression that the team isn't very happy with their new manager." Another excellent option is, "My tentative thought is," or "My initial feeling is." The word tentative or initial is key. It signals that your opinion is not fully formed and you are open to being persuaded otherwise. "My tentative thought is that the book's pacing is a little slow in the second half, but I might feel differently when I finish it." A very common and useful phrase, especially in professional or academic settings, is, "I could be wrong, but." This is a fantastic way to preface a potentially controversial idea because it shows humility. "I could be wrong, but it feels like we're focusing on the wrong problem here." You can strengthen this with, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but," comma, which explicitly invites correction. But sharing an opinion isn't just about stating your conclusion. It's about explaining your reasoning. Let's look at phrases that help you justify your stance. After you state your opinion, you can add a follow up phrase like, the reason I say that is because, or my thinking is based on the fact that, for example, I'm convinced that 4-day work weeks are the future. The reason I say that is because every study I've read points to increased productivity and employee well being. This elevates your opinion from a simple statement to a well supported argument. Another great transitional phrase is, what leads me to that conclusion is. This sounds very intelligent and structured. It seems to me that the marketing campaign was a failure. What leads me to that conclusion is the sales data from the last quarter. To provide evidence, you can also say, to illustrate my point, before giving a specific example. Finally, we need to equip ourselves with the diplomat's toolkit. This is for sharing difficult or critical opinions without causing offense. These phrases are like a protective shield for your words. A classic is, with all due respect. This directly signals that you are about to disagree with someone you respect. With all due respect, director, I see the situation differently. Another soft opener is, I don't want to be negative, but, or, I hesitate to be critical, but. This shows that your intention is not to attack, but to offer a genuine concern. I don't want to be negative, but I have to say I'm concerned about the new timeline. It feels unrealistic. One of my personal favorites for sharing a potentially unpopular idea is, this might be an unpopular opinion, but this phrase actually endears you to your listeners because it shows you're brave and you're aware of the social dynamics. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think the original movie was much better than the remake. A more subtle way to do this is to phrase your criticism as a question, such as, I'm wondering if we've considered the potential downsides of this approach. Let's synthesize all of this in a more complex scenario. Elena is in a book club meeting. They are discussing a very popular and critically acclaimed novel, but Elena had some issues with it. The first person to speak, David, says, I stand firm on this. This novel is a masterpiece of modern literature. The author's use of language is simply groundbreaking. The pressure is on. How can Elena share her differing view without being rude? She wouldn't say, I think you're wrong. That's too confrontational. Instead, she could use the diplomat's toolkit. She might start by acknowledging David's point and then use an attentive phrase. David, I can totally see why you'd call it a masterpiece. The prose is beautiful, I agree with you there. But my tentative thought is that the plot itself was a bit derivative. What leads me to that conclusion is its similarity to other books in the genre that came out years ago. Or she could use the unpopular opinion framework. This might be an unpopular opinion, especially since everyone seems to love it, but I found the main character a little difficult to sympathize with. The reason I say that is because his motivations never felt quite clear to me. I was left wondering why he made the choices he did in the final act. Look at what she accomplished there. She validated the previous speaker. I can see why. She used a soft opener, my tentative thought, unpopular opinion. She stated her critique clearly. Derivative plot, difficult to sympathize with. And she even provided a justification. Similarity to other books. Motivations never felt clear. This is a masterclass in expressing a nuanced opinion. It invites discussion. It doesn't shut it down. Your challenge is to start noticing where your own opinions fall on the spectrum of certainty. Are you always using I think? Try upgrading to I'm convinced that when you feel strongly, or softening to I get the impression that when you're less sure. Practice justifying your opinions, even in your own mind. Why do you think what you think? Articulating this is the final step in truly owning your opinion. Welcome back. Having a well formed opinion is only half the battle. A conversation, after all, is not a monologue, it is a dance. It requires you to listen, react, and respond to your partner. In this module, we will master the steps of that dance. We will learn how to agree with passion, disagree with grace, find common ground, and ask the kinds of questions that keep the conversation alive and exciting. This is where we learn to be not just a great speaker, but a great conversationalist. Let's begin with the joy of agreement. When someone says something that you completely concur with, a simple I agree can feel a little flat, a little boring. You can inject so much more energy and connection into the conversation by using more expressive phrases. A fantastic one is, you've hit the nail on the head. This idiom means you've said it exactly right. It's a powerful way to show strong agreement. For example, if your friend says, I think the problem with modern smartphones is that they're designed to be replaced in 2 years, you could respond, you've hit the nail on the head. It's called planned obsolescence, and it's so wasteful. Another enthusiastic phrase is, that's exactly what I was thinking. Or its close cousin, you took the words right out of my mouth. Both of these expressions create a wonderful sense of shared perspective. It makes the other person feel validated and understood. Imagine a colleague says, it seems to me that we're having too many meetings and not enough time for deep work. Replying with, you took the words right out of my mouth, instantly creates a strong alliance. A simpler but still powerful phrase is, I couldn't agree more. This is a classic for a reason. It's strong, clear, and universally understood. For absolute, emphatic agreement, you can say, without a doubt, or 100%. Now, we move to the trickiest step in the dance, the art of polite disagreement. This is where many language learners feel the most fear. But disagreeing doesn't have to be a conflict. With the right language, it can be a constructive and interesting part of the conversation. The golden rule is to always validate before you invalidate. Acknowledge their point before you present your own. We've already touched upon I see where you're coming from, but let's build on that. A slightly more sophisticated version is, that's a valid point, however. The word valid is key. You are explicitly stating that their argument has merit. That's a valid point about the cost. However, I think we need to consider the long-term environmental benefits. This shows you are a balanced and rational thinker. Another excellent framework is to turn it into a question. But have you considered? For example, I understand your concern about privacy, but have you considered the potential security benefits of the new system? This shifts the tone from a direct contradiction to a collaborative exploration of the issue. A very soft way to introduce a different view is, I see it a little differently. It's gentle and non-confrontational. A very respectful and formal way to disagree, perfect for professional settings, is, I respectfully disagree. It's direct, but the word respectfully cushions the blow. I've listened to your proposal, but I respectfully disagree with your conclusion about the market trends. When you use this, you must follow it up with a very clear reason. But what about the vast space between total agreement and total disagreement? That is the land of partial agreement. and skilled communicators live there. It's rare that you will agree or disagree with every single aspect of someone's opinion. The ability to find common ground is a superpower. A brilliant phrase for this is, I agree with you up to a point, but this allows you to pinpoint exactly what you agree with before introducing your differing view. I agree with you up to a point that the film was visually stunning, but I found the screenplay to be very weak. Another way to find common ground is to use the phrase, we can probably agree that. This identifies a shared foundation before you explore the areas of disagreement. Look, we can probably agree that the current situation isn't working for anyone. My main issue is with your proposed solution. A similar and very useful phrase is, while I don't agree with everything you've said, your point about X is spot on. This is surgical. You are complementing a specific part of their argument, which makes them much more receptive to hearing your counter argument. While I don't agree that we should scrap the whole project, your point about the budget being too small is spot on. We absolutely need to revisit that. Finally, a conversation dies if no one asks questions. The best conversationalists are often the most curious. After someone shares an opinion, especially a complex one, you can keep the energy flowing with follow-up questions. Avoid a simple why, which can sometimes sound aggressive or childish. Instead, use softer, more open-ended questions. That's interesting. Could you elaborate on that? The word elaborate is a polite invitation to say more. Another great option is, what makes you say that? This is a gentle probe into their reasoning. It shows you're interested not just in what they think, but how they think. A very simple and effective follow-up is, tell me more about. It's friendly, open, and gives the other person the floor. You mentioned you found the book's ending to be problematic. Tell me more about that. Let's revisit our book club for a final extended scenario. David has stated the novel is a masterpiece. Elena has politely shared her reservations about the main character. Now, another member, Chloe, wants to jump in. She partially agrees with both of them. She could say, this is such a fascinating discussion. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of you two. David, you took the words right out of my mouth when you talked about the prose. It was absolutely beautiful. But Elena, I agree with you up to a point about the main character. I also found him difficult. What makes you say his motivations weren't clear? I felt it was more that his actions were inconsistent, especially in the last 50 pages. Look at that incredible response. Chloe validated David with an enthusiastic agreement phrase. Then she validated Elena with a partial agreement phrase. Then, instead of just asking a question, she added her own specific interpretation. Actions were inconsistent, before asking for Elena's elaboration. This deepens the conversation for everyone. Now, Elena can respond. That's a really sharp observation, Chloe. I think inconsistent is a better word for it than unclear. To elaborate on my original point, I felt his sudden turn to heroism at the end wasn't earned by his character development earlier in the book. It felt like the author needed the plot to go a certain way, rather than letting the character guide the story. What did you think, David? Did that final act feel authentic to you? This is the pinnacle of a great discussion. Building on ideas, refining vocabulary, and always passing the conversational ball back to someone else. It is a dance, and with these steps, you are now ready to take the floor. Welcome to a crucial and fascinating new module. So far, we have built an incredible toolkit of phrases and strategies. But language does not exist in a vacuum. It is wrapped in culture, and culture changes the rules. What is considered polite and clear in one country might be seen as rude or confusing in another. In this module, we will develop our cultural compass, learning to navigate the subtle but powerful differences that shape English conversations around the world. Understanding this will elevate you from a good English speaker to a truly great global communicator. The most useful framework for understanding these differences is the concept of high context and low context cultures. Let's break that down. A low context culture, like those in the United States, Germany, or Australia, values direct, explicit, and literal communication. The speaker's responsibility is to be as clear as possible. The motto is say what you mean and mean what you say. The phrases we learned for strong certainty, like I'm convinced that or I disagree, are very comfortable in these cultures. On the other hand, a high context culture, such as in Japan, China, or many countries in the Middle East and Africa, relies heavily on indirect, layered communication. Meaning is conveyed not just through words, but through shared context, body language, relationship dynamics, and what is not said. The goal is often to maintain group harmony and to save face, avoiding embarrassment for anyone in the conversation. English speaking cultures can fall at various points along this spectrum. For example, British culture is often considered more high context than American culture. As a global language user, you will encounter all of these styles, so let's learn to navigate them. The first and most important area is directness versus indirectness. Imagine a business meeting where a project proposal has a serious flaw. In a very low context, direct culture, a colleague might say, "This proposal is unworkable. The budget is too small." It's clear, honest, and focuses on the problem. No time is wasted. However, to someone from a high context culture, this could sound incredibly blunt, aggressive, and disrespectful to the person who created the proposal. That person, if they wanted to express the same concern, might use a more indirect approach. They might say something like, "This is a very ambitious and interesting proposal. Thank you for the hard work. I just have a few small questions about the budget section. I was wondering if we might need to allocate more resources to ensure its success." Notice the layers here. They start with a compliment. They use softeners like just, a few, and small. They phrase their criticism as a question. I was wondering if the meaning is the same. The budget is too small, but the delivery is designed to protect the relationship and allow the other person to save face. As an English learner, you need to learn to both recognize and use these indirect phrases. They often involve qualifiers like perhaps, maybe, a little bit, or sort of. For instance, instead of, "That's a bad idea," you might hear, "That's perhaps not the most effective approach." Instead of, "Your work has errors," you might hear, "I think there might be a few small inconsistencies here." Learning to hear the real meaning behind these soft words is a superpower. Next, let's discuss the role of silence. In many Western low context cultures, silence in a conversation can feel very awkward. It's often seen as a sign of confusion, disagreement, or a breakdown in communication. People have a tendency to immediately fill it. If you pause for a long time after your American colleague speaks, they might jump in and ask, "Does that make sense? Am I not being clear?" However, in many Eastern high context cultures, silence is a respected and meaningful part of communication. It can signify thoughtful consideration. A person might be silent for several seconds after you speak to show that they are taking your words seriously. It can also be a way to express disagreement without being confrontational. A lack of an enthusiastic yes and a thoughtful silence can mean no. I once had a personal experience with this. I was in a meeting with participants from both the US and Japan. After I presented an idea, one of my American colleagues was silent for 2 seconds before another one jumped in to add his thoughts. Later, my Japanese colleague was asked for his opinion. He was silent for what felt like a very long 10 seconds. My American teammate started to shift uncomfortably, but I knew to wait. After his pause, he gave an incredibly insightful and well-structured response. He wasn't being passive, he was thinking. Understanding this can prevent a lot of misunderstanding. Let's also touch on enthusiasm and understatement, particularly between American and British English. American English often defaults to a high level of enthusiasm. Superlatives are common. If an American enjoys a movie, they might say, "It was awesome. The best movie I've seen all year." A new idea at work might be amazing or incredible. British English, in contrast, has a famous love for understatement. An understatement is when you deliberately describe something as less important or serious than it is. A British person who absolutely loved the same movie might describe it as not bad, quite good actually, or I rather enjoyed it. To an American ear, this can sound like they didn't really like it much at all, but in a British context, not bad can be very high praise indeed. If your British boss tells you your report was quite satisfactory, you might be worried. But it could very well mean they think it's excellent. The key is to listen to the other contextual clues, their tone of voice, their facial expression, and not just the literal meaning of the words. Finally, a quick word on navigating taboo topics. What is considered safe for public conversation varies wildly. In some cultures, it's normal to ask very personal questions about salary, marital status, or politics. In many English-speaking cultures, particularly in professional settings or with people you don't know well, these topics are often considered taboo or forbidden. These typically include politics, religion, and personal finances. It's generally safest to avoid these topics unless the other person brings them up first. If you are asked a question that makes you uncomfortable, you need a polite way to deflect it. You could be direct. Personally, I prefer not to discuss politics among friends. I hope you understand. Or you could be more indirect and change the subject. That's an interesting question. You know, it reminds me of something I read the other day about. And then you pivot to a new, safer topic. Your cultural compass is not about memorizing rules for every country. It's about developing an attitude of curiosity and flexibility. It's about observing, listening, and asking for clarification. You can even say, "In my culture, we usually do this differently. Can you explain the approach here?" People are almost always happy to explain their own culture. By being aware of these potential differences, you prepare yourself not just to speak English, but to connect with its speakers on a deeper, more empathetic level. Every performance must come to an end, and every conversation must eventually conclude. The way you end a conversation is just as important as the way you begin it. A clumsy or abrupt ending can leave a bad impression, undoing all the great rapport you've built. In our final instructional module, we will learn the art of the graceful exit, how to wind down a discussion politely, thoughtfully, and on a positive note, even if you didn't agree on the topic. Sometimes you need to end a conversation simply because of time constraints. You have to leave for an appointment, get back to work, or catch a bus. The key here is to signal your departure with a positive statement about the conversation itself. A fantastic phrase is, I could talk about this all day, but I really have to run. This is a huge compliment. It says, this conversation is so interesting that it's hard for me to leave. You can follow it up with a specific reason, but I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Or, but I'll be late to pick up my kids. This makes your exit feel necessary and not like you're just bored. Another warm and appreciative way to close is by saying, this has been so interesting. Thanks for the chat. Or, this has given me a lot to think about. These phrases validate the entire conversation and the person you spoke with. It leaves them feeling good about the interaction. For example, wow, I never thought about it from that perspective. This has given me a lot to think about. I've got to get going, but let's talk again soon. A great phrase to add here is, it was great catching up with you, which is perfect for friends or colleagues you haven't spoken to in a while. But what about those conversations where you've been debating, disagreeing, and you realize you are not going to convince the other person? You've reached a stalemate. Continuing to argue would only create frustration. This is the time to use the classic phrase, let's agree to disagree. This is a mutual ceasefire. It's a mature and peaceful way to end a debate without a winner or a loser. You might smile and say, well, it's clear we're not going to see eye to eye on this one. How about we agree to disagree? It's a signal that you value the relationship more than winning the argument. A slightly softer version of this is to frame the topic as something to ponder later. You can use the idiom, that's definitely food for thought. This phrase means, that's something to think about seriously. It's a non-committal way to end a debate. It doesn't mean you agree, but it shows you've taken their points on board. For example, your point about the long-term economic impact is really interesting. That's definitely food for thought. Anyway, I should probably let you get back to your day. Let's return one last time to our book club. The discussion has been lively, with different opinions on the novel. The time for the meeting is almost up. Elena, as a good facilitator, needs to bring it to a close. She could summarize and end on a high note. She might say, well, everyone, I could talk about this book all day, but it looks like our time is up. This has been such a thought-provoking discussion. It's clear we all had different reactions to the novel, which is what makes a great book club choice. Thank you all for sharing your perspectives. It was great catching up with you all. It's certainly given me a lot of food for thought. Notice the elements. She used a time constraint phrase, our time is up. She complemented the discussion, thought-provoking. She acknowledged the disagreements positively, what makes a great book club choice. And she ended with phrases that validated everyone's contribution. Great catching up, food for thought. It's a perfect, graceful exit. So your final practical task is to think about how you usually end conversations. Do you just say bye and leave? Try upgrading your exit. Use these phrases to make the other person feel appreciated and to leave a lasting positive impression. It's the final flourish in the beautiful dance of conversation. We have come to the end of our journey together. We started with a simple spark, a question about how to join a conversation. From there, we built a formidable fortress of vocabulary, learning the language of the internet and the nuanced words of opinion. We stood at the heart of the matter, learning to voice our thoughts on a spectrum from absolute certainty to delicate suggestion. We learned the intricate steps of the conversational dance, how to agree with passion, disagree with poise, and find that elusive common ground. We then fine tuned our cultural compass, preparing ourselves to navigate the diverse world of English speakers. And finally, we learned how to take a graceful bow and exit the stage. You have been given the tools, the strategies, and the frameworks to transform the way you interact in English. The core message of this entire masterclass is this: engaging with trending topics is not just a language exercise, it is an act of connection. It's about being curious about the world and the people in it. It's about having the courage to share your own unique perspective and the grace to listen to others. It's about building bridges of understanding, one conversation at a time. The phrases and techniques we've discussed are the raw materials. You are the architect who will now use them to build those bridges. And now, it is time for your master challenge. This is your opportunity to synthesize everything we have learned in this masterclass into a single, focused practice. Over the next week, I want you to find one trending topic. It could be from the international news, from your local community, or from the world of technology or entertainment. I want you to research it just enough to form an opinion. Then, I want you to either write down or simply think through a complete response as if you were in a conversation. I want you to construct a complete response in your mind, making sure it includes 5 key elements. First, consider the opener. How did you hear about the topic? Perhaps you could start by saying, I just read an article about. Next, formulate your nuanced opinion. Don't just say, it's good. Decide if it's groundbreaking, overrated, or a mixed bag, and use a phrase from our spectrum of certainty. After that, add your justification. Explain why you feel this way using a phrase like, the reason I say that is because. Then imagine a counter-argument. What would a friend who disagrees with you say? Finally, think of your polite response. How would you react to their point using a phrase like, that's a valid point, however? Or, I agree with you up to a point, but. Completing this challenge, even just in your head, will solidify all the concepts we've covered. It will move the knowledge from passive memory to active skill. I encourage you to share your Master Challenge response in the comments below. Let's see what topics are trending around the world and practice our new skills together. Thank you sincerely for dedicating your time and energy to this masterclass. It has been a pleasure to be your guide on this deep dive. Keep practicing, stay curious, and never be afraid to join the conversation. This has been Elena for English in Moments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more lessons, and I look forward to seeing you in our next one.